Hey, this is Cadillac, and you're here with the CRP. I'm here with fight analyst ASP and matchmaker and fight analyst extraordinaire Miguel Iterati. Scotty and Miguel, how are you guys doing today?
Hanging in, brother. It's been some trying times lately, but glad to be here with you so we can talk about it a little bit. How you doing, Miguel?
I'm doing well, and I like when we go outside the cage for positive things, and this one's not a positive. So,
but it's needed. So stick with us,
yeah,
folks.
Yeah, I agree. The problem, it starts with rhetoric, right? It starts with talk.
That's right. That's right.
So let's start with what happened this weekend. First of all, I want to elaborate that I just got back in country, so I'm catching up as we go here. I came back to a horror show on every channel. Unbelievable amount of murders. Scotty, what's the amount of murders? Do you know basically what they are?
Unfortunately, I've got some numbers for you. I do know that we're way up there. If you look at the mass shootings as of the 215th day of 2019, that was yesterday, I believe. You can go down the list, and it's zero in Sweden, Finland, Germany. 20 different countries: Spain, England, France, Australia. Now we get to Australia. There's been one. There's been one in Brazil. Canada. We're going to come back to Canada in this show. There's been one mass shooting, and there's been three. I'm sorry, I can't determine that flag. There's been in America 249 mass shootings this year on the 215th day of the year. There's only been one in Canada. So I mentioned that because, Trump is trying to say it's video games. Canada has the same video games we do. They have the same TV shows we do. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they have some things that we don't, which are restrictions on Nazi hate speech and white supremacy and some other things. So this is part of what I want to get into. But I'll yield back for now, and we'll get into that later.
Miguel, what can you tell us about Latin America and what are the repercussions there? Because a lot of this is based around, especially the El Paso shooting, was based around immigration. The murderer from El Paso put online his manifesto of why he was doing this, and it was all based on immigration and racism. So you're actually in the cauldron of where this is coming from, so to speak. Give me a little bit of background on that first before we get going.
The immigration and the way, the wall is popular to talk about here. I think you mentioned off camera that you were in a cab and they mentioned it to you, knowing that you're an American. I experienced the same thing here in Costa Rica. They will bring up, hey, what do you think of the wall, the immigration and stuff like that? And I think here, more so than racism, I think really the problem here is an economic problem. And then racism gets added on top of it. So, if you have a poor white person, a poor black person, or a poor Hispanic person, people look at that through a certain filter and whatever. But the bottom line is I don't think Trump cares about any of those, any of the poor, you know what I mean? So to speak. In Central America, so you get the people that say, America's allowed to have rules and, to get there, you got to, it's got to mean something. People doing it illegally, they should build a wall. People that are trying to head there and that are in more dire straits or maybe a little more liberal on the inside. They said, go ahead and build a wall. They'll find a way in. And you were in Colombia. You mentioned off camera also that Colombia's obviously got a huge influx of people from Venezuela. Percentage-wise, they're legitimately under further assault than the States is. The States gets, a couple 100,000, but, and whatever it is, it's too much, but whatever it is, and it's the United States. So, yeah, there's territory, there's resources, and you can sort of handle it. Colombia is in some of those border towns and stuff. You're talking about jungle towns. You're not. We're having a lot of infrastructure or any influx at all, where you literally have Venezuelans living in the streets now.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to me because even in those circumstances, and and the Colombian people that don't live in major cities, maybe live a little bit of an interesting life with the FARC there for 30 years and coca growing, and they've seen a lot probably. You know what I mean? And none of them are machine gunning Venezuelans. You know what I mean? You mentioned that they were looking for ways. How do we pay for this? Was the overwhelming question you got. Not let's get rid of them.
Yeah.
So they're under worse assault, and there's a different mindset and tendency. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of problems that go into this, and in the case of the other mass murders, maybe I think the Ohio one of the victims was the sister of the shooter. So now maybe there was some type of personal problem involved, or maybe he just didn't give a shit and shot his sister. I don't know the details on that, but I think that there's a wider problem here.
Yeah. So
tendency to reach for your gun now is just too prevalent, and I'm worried that it continues to escalate, and that it will continue to escalate before anything can be done. Nothing's been done. There's been a lot of talk. They keep happening.
So to kind of address the effectiveness of a wall, I don't think you could have a greater wall than mountains and massive amounts of jungle and rainforest. And to get to Medellin, Colombia, I mean, it's a 1,000-mile hike from Venezuela to Medellin, and yet there are people living on the streets from Venezuela right now in Medellin, Colombia. They had to hike through very treacherous terrain to get there, to say the least. And so when we initially started our journey, my father said, "Oh, be careful because of all that." And I said, "Dad, there's 1,000 miles of mountains, rivers, lakes, and massive growth of rainforest that's nearly impossible to traverse. It's impossible." And we get there, and they're on the streets sleeping, literally on the sidewalks. And our tour guide pointed that out and said, this is what's going on. Some people are for it, some people are against it. Scotty, let me ask you this: how much of immigration in the United States then has to do with race, rather than, because look, they're all brown or dark skinned in Latin America and in South America. So in the United States, we never talk about building a wall on Canada, and we have far more people come through the Canadian pass, and mostly Canadians illegally, than we ever have coming from the Mexican border. Why are we talking about a wall on the Mexican border? Is this about brown and white? You tell me.
Yes. It's that simple. Yes. We can get into why I think it's yes, but yes.
Please elaborate.
We've got more immigrants here from places in Europe and whatnot, in Canada, that are white, and you don't see their babies locked up in cages.
No, you do not.
You know what I mean? So to me, it's a very solid yes. And he meaning the president, stokes those flames. And I have a good friend that has talked with me recently to be careful to not pin this on Trump, because when Trump is gone, racism doesn't end, and it didn't begin when he got here. Now, he's not doing what he can to calm and to subdue these flames. He's actually making it worse. He just at a rally was talking about immigration, and a guy in the crowd says, "Shoot him." And that son of a parent laughs at that, That's more than a dog whistle. That's hollering at the racist, as
That's
though
what I
he thinks
heard,
that's funny, the idea of shooting him. He thinks that's funny. So, you look at that and you look at his policies, you look at his rhetoric, you look at who supports him and he doesn't denounce them. And when I say that, let's be very clear. This is on a national level and this is on a personal level for me. I'm Indiana, Bloomington, Miguel's in Costa Rica, you're up north. But let me explain for a moment how personal these things are. When the national KKK throws their support behind Trump, that's a problem for my country. When yesterday in Bloomington and today, we are finding flyers with the KKK hood on it, rallying and calling for support and actually telling people to call in what you see and whatnot, and to call them and how to contact them and get involved. So the KKK is a problem both nationally with supporting Trump and Trump not fully denouncing them, and they're right in my community. I'm going to pause for a second because it looks as though we've lost Chad. Miguel, is that you're seeing as well?
I see Chad.
I'm
okay,
here.
I've got black screen on my end. I don't see Chad. I don't hear Chad.
Okay, I see Chad.
still
Chad's
here.
reacting and listening and saying he's still there.
Fair enough. I'll continue. But my point being on that is that these are both national and very personal and local problems for me. We've done another podcast on the farmers market, having some Identity Europa, now AIM, American Identitarian Movement. I want to shout out to my brothers and sisters in the true AIM, the American Indian movement, been around since the 70s. And that's the real AIM. So I've been writing AIM as it refers to these neo-Nazis with a capital A, a small m, I-M. So I just want to make that clarification, show a lot of respect to the true AIM. But at any rate, we've got people passing out flyers on in our communities, on our campuses, both high school and college. If you look at Texas, the El Paso shootings, AIM was there just the week before, passing out flyers. So it's not a lone wolf. This is something I want to touch on. This idea that these people are lone wolves. No, they're not. They're young, impressionable minds that don't know what their future holds, that are being manipulated by a pack of wolves, by people that know what they're doing, by people that are disseminating this information with purpose. And that purpose is to hurt people. This is why this goes beyond free speech. It's incitement. Manson didn't kill anybody. Hitler didn't kill anybody. We all know they're responsible for a whole lot of murders. And this is where we need to start looking at this. So I'm for the laws that were just passed in Canada, the law that's been in place in England and 24 other European countries for a long time. We call ISIS a terrorist group in this country. And if you give money to ISIS today, you are breaking the law. You are considered a terrorist. If we would simply name Identity Europa, who wants to see Jews burn in ovens while they laugh at them, who wants to starve black babies. This is AIM. This is Identity Europa. This is Identitarians. This is Sarah Dye, Douglas Mackey. This is local and national. If we don't call them terrorists, then we have to honor their free speech, or we have that slippery slope where it looks like we have to honor their free speech. It's not. It's incitement. But the quickest, simplest answer is to call them terrorists. And then if you give money to AIM, the American Identitarian Movement, that is, then you too are a terrorist. Okay.
Hey, Miguel, I don't think Scott can hear me. Can you convey to him questions that I'm asking? And because I'm filming and seeing.
Miguel, I'll have to leave it to you to interpret for me.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure.
Chad can ask a question for you.
What Scott just said.
What was that?
Can you go ahead and give us your retort to Scott's comments?
Sure. He's asking me to reply to your comments. Let's see. I wonder if of the 250 here, I think you're on to a large part of the problem or part of the problem. But I don't know that that's that racism is actually the responsible root cause of every mass murder out there, you know. And if that's particularly the case, then, you know, is there another root cause? And I think that that there is something worrying about, like, the disaffected youth, because one of the kids in Florida, I think, with one of the recent shootings, he was a Latino, right? So, you know, so you could even get in Los Angeles, in Texas, in these communities that, you know, people there are used to hearing Spanish. People in those, you know, you might not like it, you might not that, but it's been that way for so long. So that's actually where you've got people that are actually living day to day together there, you know, and you get one person that's disaffected, kills everybody, and everybody from the north who's not living with Latinos like they do think, you know, they understand the problem. So I you know, I don't know. I don't understand the, you know, well, let me correct myself. I actually do understand, once you get disaffected, the idea of, like, man, I just want to shoot everybody in my class, you know, when you're a kid, you know? So now, does video games contribute to some of this? Yeah. You know, I would have to say yes. I would have to say yes, only because it really does desensitize you. We did a separate podcast on video games and on the I forget what the Grand Theft Auto, the GTA.
Yeah.
I know GTA because that's you know, the marketing and stuff.
It was the N word.
Yeah, in Grand Theft Auto, the N word is so prevalent that it got to the point where I just, you know, we did a podcast on it, because you have to question, how could that be okay, you know? How could that be okay? So somebody, you know, in the engineering department, they made a bad decision and they put the N word in the programming and stuff like that. And then the game goes through all kinds of, you know, people looking at it and stuff and making sure, oh no, you know, this, that, or the other stuff. Everybody left it in there. It sold 100 million things. And now you could be you know, the bottom line is we're told not to say that, you know, we try not to say that word. We're asked not to say that word, you know. To me, it's a courtesy in society to not use the word. I would like to use the word, you know. When I was younger, I've used the word as a kid and stuff in the 70s. And, you know, I could even use it in non-racial ways, you know. But I don't use it at all because of a courtesy, you know. And I think that's just this tiny little olive branch. But then I buy a video game for my kid, and it's like, yo, bro, I'm gonna say bro instead of the N word. Bro, get that, bro. What's up, bro? Hey, bro, what, bro? It's like, I just heard the word 15 times in 30 seconds. It's like, how does that not desensitize you? You know? So
Yeah.
on top of that, now that's just one game and one racial aspect, but every one of these games is like, oh, you know, they know that they got to break this mirror here, and they get a bigger gun, you know, and then it's that. And video games will contribute to this problem, I think, you know, before we just start saying that's not, you know, that Trump is just bringing it up. Experts, and it warrants looking at, you know, because the bottom line is the video game allows you to do extreme amounts of violence, allows you to do extreme, and here's the other part, and I mentioned being worried about this off camera too, is I don't like, I wish they would report another mass murder, you know, murder, random shootings, this, that, and the other stuff. But the tendency is that 21 died. Oh, what happens with the 21 dead this weekend? So maybe Ohio's, oh yeah, it's only 10. I don't, you know, that one's not that big. It's not as good.
The desensitized, yeah.
And so the numbers game, you know, of stuff is a dangerous game, and it comes from the video game of topping yourselves. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can buy into that, but I do understand where you're coming from.
It has to do with the brain is practicing doing a lot of things in the game. So anyway, but listen to this here. I believe there was a case, I think it was in Norway, which is a country that you kind of expect to be not susceptible to this, but this was within the last decade. And a kid went to a resort, like they had like a
Christchurch.
No, Christchurch is New Zealand. This is
That's right, New Zealand. Yeah,
this is
Norway. My bad.
This is Norway, where a student they had kids that they took to like an island, and one guy
made a
went
movie of it too, I think.
and he mentioned that he didn't do so good. You know, he thought he'd get more and stuff like that. Or there was that aspect of keeping a tally of what you're doing. The Christchurch guy did it all on 8clan, which is a website.
8chan.
8chan, or yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the point there with that is so check this out. That guy had the GoPro camera while he's shooting and stuff like that. So there's a sense of one-upmanship, both in the body counts and in the how can you get exposure, how can you get this out there, to shock the most people. So now someone disaffected, there's a lot of different ways and tools that this can go. It doesn't necessarily, some of them are not going to be because of racism.
Let me ask you guys this.
Accessibility and the desensitization.
Let me ask you guys this. Can you hear me okay?
ASP, is Chad back for you?
Chad is not back for me, unfortunately.
Can you hear him?
Okay.
I cannot hear nor see.
Okay.
Convey this for me. I want to ask Scott this then. The Las Vegas shooter, that obviously was not about race. So we have multiple mass shootings. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens of mass shootings in the United States. If it's not about race, then what is it about? Because we have enough evidence to say maybe it's not about race, because the shooter in Las Vegas, that wasn't about race. That was just about somebody going on a rampage for who knows what reason. Ask Scott that for me, and I want to hear him. I want to hear what he says about that.
Scott, Chad wants to ask you about for example, the Las Vegas shooter and a shooter like that, where race doesn't appear to be, an aspect of it on the forefront. What your thoughts are on something like that, because it does, I think a lot of energy was spent on looking for this guy's reasons for doing it, and I think that, a bank account going, in the red direction instead of the black direction, maybe a little bit of not a happy home life and stuff like that. That's really all you need.
Sure. I would agree with that, but I would also say if we look at the studies done by the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center, and if we just simply look at ourselves, the past, just this year or go back 10 years, the point being is that we're somewhere in the 95 percentile of these mass shooters are white men who do have some connection to a right-wing ideology. So to say that, there are people who aren't racist or aren't right-wing or who aren't trying to actuate the 14 words, if you will. Sure, maybe there are a couple out there. And I think this problem has to do with access to the guns once people do want to do something harmful. You let somebody get mad and want to do something harmful in England, where they basically have pocket knives and they stab a couple of people. I mean, the guy in Ohio, 30 seconds from the time he's first shot till he was dead, and he still killed 20-some people. You can't do that with a knife. It's impossible. You can't do that with a shotgun. You can't do it with a rifle that has, 10 in the cartridge and yet bolt action or even semi-automatic. You just can't do that unless you have high capacity magazines and a fast firing rate. But what I mean by 14 words, so I don't forget to tell you, is, and the 14 words have been connected to the shooters from this week. And again, that's the problem. It's instigating these people that are with their low bank accounts or not knowing their future or having a hard time at home or work and whatnot. But you give them something to cling on to, And they say, well, if I'm going out, because these are people that might have just been going to commit suicide. Let's face it, in a different time and era, they might just kill themselves. But there's 14 words that have been passed out that inspired these people. And if you see 1488 tattooed on people's arms or faces, we've got a guy here in Bloomington with swastika on his chin, white power on his lip, 1488 on the cheeks, more swastikas up here. The 14 is for 14 words, which are this: we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. So if they're going out any rate, they're going to try and take out, because there's a couple things I wanted to point out. You guys mentioned the Ohio shooter. He attacked a predominantly black club. 6 of his 9 victims were black. So to say that, he killed his sister and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't know details. So I'm not. I apologize for that.
No, and I don't mean to admonish. I just mean to say I don't know either. But I do know that 6 of the 9 were black, and it was at a black club. Maybe his sister was dating a black guy, and that's what made him mad. I don't know the answers to these things. But when 6 and 9 are black, it's definitely got a racist element. When you know that he was inspired by 14 words, you see what I mean?
So let me
1488, just to clarify, 8th letter of the alphabet being H, so 888 is HH, which is Heil Hitler. So it's, we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, Heil Hitler. That's the creed of these people. That's who they're inspiring and what they're inspiring. And I want to also say that I don't believe I agree with the fact that the Las Vegas guy wasn't connected to racism. I believe it was proven that he had some right-wing and racist views. So I just want to throw that out there to our viewers who might be thinking that too. Well, wasn't he? I believe that he was. So I don't want to accept on face value. I don't want to say you guys are wrong. I don't think it was a manifesto that he put out. It wasn't maybe his point, but I do believe that he was influenced by these far right racist ideology. I believe that there was some of that in the Las Vegas shooters past.
Okay, so Miguel, let me interrupt with this one then, because we're on time restraints here, obviously. And if you can convey this to Scott for me as well. I apologize for the technical issue here. It's a little bit tricky with the 3-way and the 4-way stuff. What does religion? What part does religion play in all of this? Because if this was an Islamic man, if this was a man from the Middle East who had committed either of these acts, we would immediately in the United States go to, he's a radical Muslim. We would immediately do that. But what we do know about these incidents this weekend is that they all identified as Christians in one way or another. I'm not saying that they go to church every day. What are your thoughts on that? And ask Scott the same after you're finished, or convey this to him, and then you go first.
All right, Scott, you're going to follow me on a response here, but Chad's checking in here and saying, first, how would any of these shootings be different if it was a Muslim who had done the shooting? Are we going to ignore the fact that perhaps, some type of fundamental Christianity is involved in some of this stuff? Because the bottom line is that a lot of these guys do identify as Christians as well, and there is some of that there. So you'll get to talk after me. Religion to me is really a very, very touchy subject, because it's the one thing that, you can't say to someone, no, you're wrong. You know what I mean? And it's like, and literally, so you can believe, I always sort of joke around and say, I believe that when you get to the gates of heaven, St. Peter asks you for your tonsils, your appendix, and your wisdom teeth. And if you have all 3 and can give them, you get in free. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. You can't take that away from me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but my point is so it becomes a real touchy subject. Now, from what we know, like, to me, I live by the 10 Commandments. You know what I mean? It's like they're pretty good rules. I mean, it's like you try not to kill, try not to steal, try not to sleep with, your neighbor's wife, and follow those rules. You can lead a pretty good life. But you get people who tell you that the rest of the Bible and that you got to do this and you got to be this way and things like that. So it's like, I don't know, it seems to be a decent guy for 98% of the world. And then all of a sudden, all religions seem to go off the tracks at some point, one or the other, and you have people who take them to such an extreme that, you know, it's affecting everybody else's lives around them. So I you know, if it was a Muslim and we had the case of the kid who was actually done MMA fights and stuff like that, and I don't know if he was Chechnyan, but I think this was the Boston shooting, right, where the one kid died and he was. There's a good example of one where you had two guys more or less coordinated. The thing is one of them was the kid that died was actually really well trained, and the other guy was more of a goofball, the guy that's in jail now. But two well-trained guys can do a lot of damage, right? That's scary to me, and that may be coming, right? But anyway, the Boston shootings, those guys were Muslims and stuff like that. And part of the ideology of the kid that died, was he was more hardcore against, you know, more or less the American way of life, felt it offensive, this, that, and the other stuff. And then the other dummy just followed along, basically. Maybe, yeah, sure, I believe that, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
They could have just as easily been Christians. They could have just, you know, Jews. We haven't had too many Jewish mass murderers, I guess, right? So maybe, you know, I don't want to lift that religion above all else. I think that, you know, that they stand very much in the middle of the religious fray right now in the world, right? But that's what it is. They draw lines, and it's us and them. And once you bring religion into the conversation, what frightens me about it is that in no case does anybody enter a conversation thinking, you know, I may have to change my mind here. You know what I mean? Religion gives you the ideology and the ability to say, no, I believe this. You can't change my mind. I won't change my mind. So, you know, I've got my wisdom teeth. Do you?
I have two of the
Miguel,
fours.
let me interject real quick.
Purgatory.
Hold on, Chad. We gotta let ASP respond.
No, let me interject real quickly.
I have two of my four wisdom teeth. That put me in that purgatory there, Miguel.
Ask him how leaders.
I will say, you know,
hold on. You're both talking. ASP, I'm going to give you the floor in a minute, but Chad wants to chime in with one more addendum. So hold on.
Ask Scott to tie in how leadership, whether it's religious or political, can lead to the confrontations that we've had and the mass murders that we see almost on a weekly basis now. Can you ask him to chime in on that as well? Thank you.
He asked you can respond to the question about religion and also about the role of leaders in leadership here and how they can play a role, whether they're Christian or not, in this type of thing. So shoot, you got the floor.
Okay. Yeah, and I do think religion plays some part in it, as far as at least not always speaking out against it in the ways that we need to. In other words, that is to say, when you have shooters in you know, that attack certain groups, whether they're homosexuals or whatnot, if we have churches continually preaching that that's a sin and an abomination, then that's not helpful. And that would be Muslim and Christian alike that both do that. And so, and I want to go back a little bit to what we were talking about. There are lots of different numbers out there on this, but if you look at some of the and I just lost my darn page. I'm sorry about that. But if you look at some of the numbers that are out there, right-wing extremism, I've looked up, is really prevalent among, again, the right wing. We go years and years without having an Islamic or a left-wing terror attack or murder, and we have, you know, 30 or 40 of them pretty regularly. And I've got a list here that goes back to 2007 up through 2017. And I know the last 2 years have been even worse, that there were no major left wing or Islamic attacks, but that there were on some of these other issues. And I've got my chart back up here so I can tell you those numbers now. Okay. Starting in 2008. Now, this is one I found. This is not about mass shootings altogether. Incidents of murder by extremist ideology from 2008 to 2017. I've sent the chart, so maybe we can put this chart somewhere at the in the look for it, folks. We'll try and link this chart somewhere and some of the others. But 2008, it's kind of got a chart that goes up somewhere around 29 or 30 right wing, no left wing, no Islamic. That's in 2008. 2009 looks like one left wing, but more right wings at 32. So you get into 2010, 11, 12, and 13. Those 4 years, no left wing extremist attacks, but around that 30 mark on the right wing. It jumps up in 2015. The right wing's well over 30, no left wings. In 2014, one left wing. So you see what I'm saying? There's 1 to 30 or 0 to 35, and there were no what were identified as left wing extremists for 4 years. This is the source I do want to put out is the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. This is what they call their heat map. That's H period, E period, heat map data. So that's available. You can look it up. We'll try and post it in something. So, and that's kind of what I'm getting at with this whole thing is it is a gun thing because when the right wing takes susceptible young youths that appear to be lone wolves, but that are actually manipulated by a pack of wolves, then they do have access to the guns that can kill more people. And one of my senseis, Mr. Scott, want to shout out to him, posted online earlier today, and I'm going to have to paraphrase, but he basically said this. When a gun guy says, I can reload so quick it doesn't matter, or I can kill people with a knife, or I can run them over with my car, guns don't matter. Open up your gun cabinet where you've got your automatic and your 100-round clip, and then you've got your little pea shooter over there. It's old school, tamp it down and whatnot, a freaking musket, and you've got a 6-shooter revolver, and so you run the gamut all the way up. Now, make up a scenario. If there's 50 guys in your front yard trying to get in to kill your wife and kids, or just go dark if you want, just say, for whatever reason, I feel like killing a lot of people today, right? Just go dark for a minute. What of those guns, the musket or the 100-round clip in an automatic rifle, is going to allow you to kill the most people and the quickest? And if your answer is the fully automatic with the great big clip, then all your other arguments about guns don't matter are BS. The guns matter. The size of the guns, the firing rate, the size of the clip, it all matters. Now, when these extremists can recruit these young kids, these young white kids, let's face it, and get them into the mindset that they don't mind dying and that they don't mind killing, you make it easier by having those available. So my point is, we are letting this racism run rampant in America. Again, the bills in Canada, England, and 24 other European countries that say flying a swastika with pride, not having it in a museum. We're not talking about history. We're talking about being part of ISIS for Nazis, any of those groups, which are just terrorist groups, being a part of them proudly and flying the Nazi flag and doing the damn Heil Hitler. Those things, and I wouldn't have thought this 15, 20 years ago, but I'm over it. First off, free speech does not include incitement and causing physical violence through encouragement of that physical violence. So in that regard, I don't think we need to change any laws. We also don't need to change any laws when we just call a terrorist group a terrorist group. They actually want to do harm. They've actually done harm. They've actually put bombs in synagogues. This is Identity Europa's members. This is what they do. So, and they've shot up people, obviously. So when those things happen, it's not free speech, and we really don't need any new laws. So at one part, I'm saying, let's enforce the laws we have. Let's call these people terrorists and crack down on them. The other part is, I would now be for laws outlawing wearing a swastika and being a proud Nazi. To be in those groups is to be supporting terrorism. Not really a new law is needed, because you can't do that with ISIS. You can't give money to ISIS today. You're considered a terrorist if you give money to ISIS. So we really don't need new laws. But I would be for new laws as well, even though I don't think they're necessarily needed. I don't think people are at the point where they're ready to enforce the laws that we have. And so maybe that's a whole nother topic, but we've got to do something and call these folks terrorists that they are and treat them as terrorists, just like we do ISIS. They're white ISIS.
Okay, that's great. Hey, Miguel, let's get on our last the last topic here of this podcast.
Okay.
We're at 40 minutes, so I'd like to hear both of you talk to me briefly about President Trump came out today, and for the first time in his presidency, he actually denounced white supremacy. For the first time, he finally denounced white supremacy. What are your reactions to that? And convey that to Scott for me as well, since we're having a technical issue here. And then we'll cut off after
Scott,
that.
I'm going to let you lead off on this one. We're going to close out the podcast, and basically your reaction to Donald Trump's comments today that kind of condemned white supremacy. It was the first statements that he's made, basically condemning them and with stronger wording around it. So give us your reaction to that, and then I'll talk, and then we'll close it out.
He's too late. He can't redeem himself at this point. He's done far too much harm, because some speechwriter and some cabinet members finally said, hey, you've got to do something. This is, going to look bad on you, whatnot. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. He laughs. Just recently, when someone said shoot him at the rally, he laughs. So, in his policies against Muslims and people coming from the South and whatnot. And so his policies are racist. He's racist. As I said, we're all racist, but he doesn't even try. He fans those flames. I simply don't believe him.
Yeah, I tend to. I tend to agree with a little bit of a different slant. I just, unfortunately, he's a figurehead, and I think it is too little, too late in this type of speech, and it doesn't come as genuine with the history that that we've had over the last couple of years. But I also don't think it signals any real. I think it's just a speech.
Yeah. What action is there with it?
Yeah. What's he gonna? What's next? Is the next time somebody says shoot him at a rally, he gonna say, "Get that motherfucker out of here," or is he gonna laugh again? So I don't know. I don't know what it means that he comes out and says it, other than that, it's the party line at this point. It's like Scotty mentioned, the puppet masters, for lack of a better word, have gotten to the point where, something's got to be done or whatever. And, you get this speech again. I think that the root problems are there. Scotty's numbers are daunting in that, perhaps there is, a deep down racial something that is a core reason for some of this. And and on a secondary level, you've got a lot of society, social media certainly doesn't help, because, if you're a loner in some town, but now that there are people like you,
Right.
maybe in Columbine or Sandy Hook or wherever, but there are people like you. And now that's empowering to a certain extent, So social media also has, but what are we going to do? Shut down, social media or anything like that? And it's a weird thing, because, that's part of also the Huawei and the controversy with China, is that the Chinese control all that stuff on every one of their people, even if there's 2 billion of them. If you look at them in the, in the western part of their country, where they have a Muslim area of it, what they've done is they've sent 2 million people of their Han Chinese descent to go live in those cities and open camps and do re-education and stuff like that. And they just flooded it. You know, you got an area there, they sent 1 billion people of it, but that's how they control everything. And we, you know, we don't want to live that way, right? So, but when you leave people to their own devices, that's what you're now going to get. You're now going to get these loners that at least know they're not alone.
Right.
And,
Right.
You know, so social media doesn't help. The video games, I can't imagine that, you know, playing, you know, some of these games from 8 years old. And again, did you kill enough to tally? Did you get the bigger gun? Did you do all this? All of that becomes part of your experience. That experience in my head, I mean, I played Atari and I shot Space Invaders and stuff,
Right.
but I also ran around outside, you know, and did things and, you know, got beat up by bigger kids and, you know, beat up young, you know, smaller kids and lived a life. Now you've got the video games being very much something that people can isolate themselves.
Again,
that takes so much up of their experience and stuff like that. It really is a practice, you know. You can. Yeah. It's not too far away. Consider the potential video games and the potential of little children to manipulate things. A game is. It's not. I wouldn't even be surprised if something's out there now. But using some of the technology of a simple game like Minecraft, you could actually lay out your fucking school and practice and walk through the school. I'm going to shoot here first, this door, and make it and lay it out and have it on a 3D design on your computer and walk through and do walkthroughs. Sure. You mean to tell me that that's not going to be helpful, you know, to a shooter, to guys that are looking to kill? I want to kill more than the guy did in Walmart this weekend.
I disagree, but the question remains: Canada has all the same TV we have.
No, I agree, and the ideology part. And the ideology, and it comes with here. The part to me too is how many times do we have like so many poor kids that are disaffected, but that literally couldn't go out and buy a gun because at 18 you can apply for a credit card and then go down to the gun shop, and you probably have a clean record. So in 7 days you'll have your gun, and a lot of them have done that. They've gone through the legal process and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So those background checks are just, you know, I don't know, you know, if an 18-year-old applied, you know, if some of these situations are like this, and you know, this probably accounts for 1%, but right, the kid graduates from high school, spends a couple of months, doesn't get a job, doesn't go to college, gets more and more pissed off, goes down to Walmart, applies for a gun. In a week, he'll have it. They go back to their high school because that's, you know, all they've done in life, right? So now, is the background check something? He's an 18-year-old. Was his high school called? Because the principal would know immediately. No, whoa. That's not the one kid you want with a gun.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So I mean, I don't know if he's 18, if he's 21. At what point is calling the high school? You know, I'm not an expert on background checks. I don't know what they do, but there's some logical points here. You know, how about calling the parents? But you can't because he's an adult and he's allowed. You know, now if he lives at home, call his guardians. You know, if he's still on his fucking parents' medical insurance, I don't care if he's an adult.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there needs to be. But the point is, Anthony enlightened me a little bit this podcast because the underlying ideology that's being floated out there just again adds to this desensitization, desensitizing of people, and you know, because it's so serious, and because you get people like if you've tattooed 1488, and I didn't know what that was. I was thinking, what happened in 1488? Like, so, but I didn't know that. But if you've tattooed 1488 on your cheeks, you know, I don't know if you're going to get a bank job. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it used to be not. Now you can sue to get your bank job, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. What if you have a bank now and you go get 1488? What if you have that job now and get come in Monday with the 1488 on your forehead.
And see, that's where I'm saying we may need to revisit some of our laws. If you are willing to have, and there's a picture, maybe we can put this on the podcast too, or at least in the comments, folks. But there's a guy running around Bloomington, threatening people, threatening my friend late night at a gas station, threatening people online about this farmer's market thing and supporting Sarah and Doug. And he has a swastika on his chin. He has white power for a mustache tattooed on there. He has 1488 on the cheek. He has 2 more swastikas on the temples. This is just his face. This is the guy, So my point is, no, we should not have to give that guy a job or not fire him if he has a job. If you want to have a swastika on your chin, I will close my business before you work for me. Bottom line, I will not allow that to happen. Okay. So there's something I was going to reply to, but I know we need to wrap this up. Let me just, there was something going around earlier that friends and I were talking about, and I'm going to finish with this. And this will give you an idea. Okay. A bunch of innocent people got murdered. What should we do? Was the murderer Muslim? Yes. Travel bans? No. Was the murderer Hispanic? Yes. Build a wall? No. Was the murderer black? Yes. More cops in prison? No. Was the murderer white? Yes. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers.
Hey, Miguel, I want
to take action
real quickly because I had hundreds of hits on, on my Facebook because I posted that exact meme. And when I did, every single one of the posts that I had that were oppositional to that post claimed that I was picking on Christians, that I was picking on people of faith, and they missed the point of the meme being that this is about race and it is about white privilege versus other races having actions taken against them that white males in this situation don't. They say that they're mentally ill, which I mean, I'm sure they are, but they evoke mental illness and any other excuse except what it is versus build a wall, travel bans. They're radical Muslims. And I'm very outspoken on the idea that I don't like the Islamic laws and the credence that they follow at all. It's misogynist, it's racist, and it's brutal to say the least. However, if they're peace-loving people, I don't care what they practice. And that goes for Christians as well. But when Christians are identifying and sticking up for people who are killing in the name of God or somehow justifying this to beat up, berate, bully, or otherwise harm the LGBT community, etc., that just goes on and on. So one thing that Trump did say today was that he was willing to look at any good idea that would begin to stop this. Now, I'm not a Trump backer at all. I'm a far left liberal, but I do have to at least acknowledge that he's finally come around to saying something about this. And I think that's very important. Hey guys, we're out of time. This has been a great talk. Do either of you have anything to add to this before we wrap up?
Okay. I'm content with the content so far, and I know we're running long. Anthony, you got any final words before Chad wraps it up?
No, I'm good on that. Unfortunately, I can't hear Chad at any rate, so I can't reply to what he just said. But I hope this one does come out. I think we've basically hit on some points that are worth talking about and open this discussion up. And to our listeners and viewers, I think we're going to pick this back up a little later on. Sort of a multi-part series. So I do encourage everyone to stick around for that. I'm learning as I go too, folks, but when we look at the numbers and we look at what's going on and what people are doing and saying, I think there's a pattern developing here that we can take some solid actions to help stop and help save some lives. And that's what I hope we end up doing, is we figure out a way to save some lives.
Thank both of you very much. We'll see you guys again later tonight for another part of Three Sides to Every Story.
Namaste.
I want to finish up by saying that this has been the CRP. I'm Chadillac, and I appreciate everybody's comments and constructive criticism about this. I apologize for the technical issue that we had there, but I think we made it through pretty well. We are going to be talking again this evening with, I believe, analyst Amanda is going to join us, as well as Scott's going to be with us again. We hope to get Devin Miller back in on this one, as well as Miguel will probably be back in on it as well too. So until next time, we shall see you all again. Have a great day and be safe out there. It's dangerous. Namaste.